Dear students, I welcome you all to this class. In the last class, we have discussed about basic accounting concepts. In that, we have seen 5 concepts. First, dual aspect concept, which states that every business transactions involve twofold effects or two aspects. One is the benefit receiving aspect and the other one is the benefit giving aspect. One is the benefit receiving aspect and the other one is the benefit giving aspect, and these two aspects are always equal, isn't it? And they are technically called debit aspect and the credit aspect. And next we have seen the principle of realization or the concept of revenue recognition. It says that revenue should be recognized not when actually it is received, but when the right to receive a revenue arises, we have to treat it as revenue is earned. And next, matching concept we have seen. Matching concept says that periodically revenues and expenses of the business are matched to ascertain the result of the business. And then full disclosure concept says that all material facts should be shown in the books of accounts. No material information should be hidden, isn't it? And next we discussed about consistency concept, which says that the methods followed for recording the transactions should not be changed time and again. If it is changed time and again, it will not help the users of information to take the right decisions, isn't it? That was the discussion in the last class. Now let me start with the next concept, that is concept of conservatism. What it says? Concept of conservatism. Actually, it's also called the principle of prudence. The concept of conservatism provides guidance for recording transactions in the books of account and is based on the policy of playing safe. While recording the transactions, we have to follow the principle of playing safe or policy of playing safe. What it means? Actually, see now, the concept of conservatism states that a conscious approach should be adopted. Conscious approach should be adopted in ascertaining the income. Of the business, or when we follow the conscious approach, the income ascertained or the profit of the enterprise will not be overstated. If we do not follow conscious approach, the profits of the business may be overstated. When the profit of the business is overstated, what happens? It may lead to payment of dividend out of capital. That is why the concept of conservatism says you should follow a conscious approach or approach of cautiousness. What it says? Actually, the conservatism principle says while recording the transactions, you should not consider or you should not record the profits or incomes until it is realized. Income should not be recorded in the books of the firm until it is realized. But all losses, even expected losses which have a very remote possibility, all losses, even those losses which may have a very remote possibility, are to be provided for in the books of account. What it says? Put it in other words, anticipate all probable losses. The concept of conservatism says, anticipate all probable losses and provide for it, but do not record anticipated profit till it is realized. ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು? ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಕನ್ಸರ್ವೇಟಿಸಮ್ ಏನು ಹೇಳುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ಇದು ನಾವು ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಡೆ ಕೂಡ ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸುವಂಥದ್ದು. ನಮಗೇನಾದರೂ ಲಾಭ ಆಗೋದಿದ್ರೆ ಆ ಲಾಭ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಆದಾಗ ಅದನ್ನ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. Income or profit should be recorded only when it is realized. But if we expect some losses tomorrow, we have to record it today only. We have to get ready ourselves to face the consequences. Isn't it? That's what conservatism says. ನಾಳೆ ನಮಗೇನೋ ಒಂದು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಾ ಖರ್ಚು ಆಗತ್ತೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಇವತ್ತೇ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಿದ್ಧರಾಗಬೇಕು. ಅದು ಕನ್ಸರ್ವೇಟಿಸಮ್. ಹಾಗಾದ್ರೆ ನಾಳೆ ಏನೋ ನನಗೆ ಲಾಭ ಬರೋದಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಇವತ್ತೇ ಇರೋ ಹಣವನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಖರ್ಚು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಬಾರ್ದು. ದಟ್ಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ಕನ್ಸರ್ವೇಟಿಸಮ್ ಸೇಸ್. ಆಂಟಿಸಿಪೇಟ್ ಆಲ್ probable losses and provide for it. Anticipate all probable losses and provide for it, but do not record anticipated profit. Profit should be recorded only when it is realized, whereas the loss should be recorded in expectation. Look there, conservatism concept says record anticipated losses. Record anticipated losses in expectation. If you expect a loss tomorrow or in the near future, you record it or you consider it and provide for it today only. ನಾಳೆ ಒಂದು ನಿಮಗೆ ನಷ್ಟ ಆಗೋದಿದೆ, ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಾ ಖರ್ಚು ಬರೋದಿದೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಮುಂಚಿತವಾಗಿಯೇ ಹೇಗೆ ಮೀಟ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಪ್ಲಾನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನು ಹೇಳುತ್ತೆ ಕನ್ಸರ್ವೇಟಿಸಮ್ ಪ್ರಿನ್ಸಿಪಲ್? ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಆಂಟಿಸಿಪೇಟೆಡ್ ಲಾಸಸ್ ಇನ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟೇಷನ್, ವೆರಸ್ ಆಂಟಿಸಿಪೇಟೆಡ್ ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟ್ ಶುಡ್ ನಾಟ್ ಬಿ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡೆಡ್ ಇನ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟೇಷನ್. ನಾಳೆ ಒಂದು ಲಾಭ ಆಗ್ತದೆ ಅಂತ ಅದನ್ನ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಡಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುತ್ತೆ. ಆಂಟಿಸಿಪೇಟೆಡ್ ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟ್ಸ್ ಶುಡ್ ನಾಟ್ ಬಿ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡೆಡ್ ಇನ್ expectation. When it should be recorded then? It should be recorded only on actual basis. It should be recorded only when actually it is earned. Only when actually it is earned. Conservatism says record anticipated losses in expectation, whereas anticipated profit should not be recorded in expectation. They should be recorded actually. Only when it is earned it should be recorded, whereas losses should be recorded well in advance. We have to provide for it, and this policy is called policy of playing safe. It is called policy of playing safe. Policy of playing safe. That's about conservatism concept. And if I want to give some examples, you may be knowing valuing closing stock. Closing stock, you know, isn't it? Stock of goods remaining unsold at the end of the period, accounting period, is called closing stock. Stock means stock of goods here. Valuing closing stock at cost or market price, whichever is lower. Valuing closing stock at cost or market price or market value, whichever is lower, is the best example for following the concept of conservatism. Even creating provision for doubtful debts, this you will come to know later, and even discount on debtors, writing off intangible assets like goodwill, patents, etc., come under the guidance of the concept of conservatism. And let me elaborate the first example, that is valuing closing stock at cost or market value, whichever is lower. What happens? Closing stock, is the stock of goods remaining unsold in the business at the end of the accounting period. See here, cost price of goods, assume rupees 100 per unit, rupees 100 per unit, and market price is at the end of the year is 80 per unit. Okay, cost price is rupees 100, market price is rupees 80 in one case. Assume you have purchased 1000 units in a particular year by paying rupees 100. 1000 units by paying rupees 100. And how much it comes to? It comes to 1 lakh, isn't it? 1 lakh. And during the year you sold 800 units. During the year you sold 800 units for some price, let it be, and 200 units are still in stock, means 200 units are in stock with the business. Then how much is the value of that 200 units? That we have to ascertain. 200 into 100, how much? 20,000, isn't it? 200 into 100, 20,000. And market price at the end of the year for that particular product is 80. Market price for that particular product is 80. So how much it is? 16,000. Now how to value the closing stock? That's a question here. How to value the closing stock? 200 units purchased at rupees 100, and now market price, if you sell it, how much you will get? 80 rupees per unit, means 16,000 you will get. Now in the book, how you value this closing stock? Closing stock here, whether you have to show it as 20,000 or 16,000. Closing stock is to be shown as 20,000 or 16,000. Now we have to follow the conservatism principle. See, actually 4,000 rupees loss here. Perhaps in the year next year it may be sold at a higher price. That is different matter. But at present market value is 80 and cost price is 100. Then what the conservatism principle says? You should record the closing stock either at cost or at market value, whichever is lower. Which is lower here? Market price is lower, so we have to show it at a lower price. That is the policy of conservatism or the concept of conservatism. See, in another example you may see that the cost price is rupees 100, same, but the market price is rupees 120. Cost price is rupees 100, market price is rupees 120, and the same 200 units are in stock. Now we have to take which price? Market price or cost price? We have to take the cost price, because whichever is lower. Closing stock ಅನ್ನ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ನಾವು ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು? ಕನ್ಸರ್ವೇಟಿಸಮ್ ಪ್ರಿನ್ಸಿಪಲ್ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಪ್ರೈಸ್ ಆರ್ ಮಾರ್ಕೆಟ್ ಪ್ರೈಸ್ ವಿಚೆವರ್ ಈಸ್ ಲೋವರ್, ಈ ಎರಡರಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವುದು ಕಡಿಮೆ ಇರ್ತದ ಆ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂದಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು? ಕ್ಲೋಸಿಂಗ್ ಸ್ಟಾಕ್ ಅನ್ನು ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ದಿಸ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ಬೆಸ್ಟ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಫಾರ್ ದ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ conservatism. I hope you understood the point. Okay, once again I repeat, while valuing the closing stock we have to follow the principle of conservatism or the concept of conservatism, which says closing stock should be valued at cost price or market price, whichever is lower. Closing price is valued at cost price or market price, whichever is lower. Okay, this is a conservatism concept. This approach of providing for losses but not recognizing the gains until realized is called conservatism approach. See here, in the first case, there is a loss of rupees 4,000. What the concept says? You consider it. But in the second case, there is a profit, but you don't consider it. You consider it only when that profit is earned. That's what conservatism says. So this approach of providing for losses but not recognizing the gains until it is realized is called conservatism approach. Okay, that's about concept of conservatism. Now let's move on to see the other concept, that is materiality concept. What is this materiality concept? The materiality concept says that accounting should focus on material facts. Accounting should focus on material facts. Materiality concept or concept of materiality. It says that accounting should focus on material facts while preparing the financial statements or while recording the transactions. The material facts should be shown. The concept of full disclosure says all facts should be shown. What type of facts? All material facts should be shown. If you go on including all the items, all the facts in the financial statements, then it may be burdened, or there may be a burden on financial statements, and users of information find it difficult to read all those things. So we should not overburden the financial statements. That's what materiality concept says. Means only material facts should be shown in the books of account. Efforts should not be wasted. Efforts of the users of information should not be wasted, or effort should not be wasted in recording and presenting facts which are immaterial in the determination of income. Efforts should not be wasted while recording and presenting the facts which are immaterial in the determination of income. See, some facts, their consequences may be there on the business, but their details are not material. Then such facts should not be recorded in the books of account. That's what materiality concept says. Then what is a material fact? That is a question. What is material fact? I said immaterial facts should not be included in the financial statements or books of accounts, as it becomes burden on the part of the accountant or the burden for the users of information. But what is material fact? The materiality depends on the nature and amount involved. Remember, the materiality of facts depends on its nature and amount involved. Sometimes small amount may be involved, then other details is not required. What is material? Say for example, A is running a business. One day while he is carrying on his business, some people comes and asks for charity. So he gave 5 rupees as charity. 5 rupees as charity. In this case, 5 rupees is important. It's small amount, small amount. After some times another person comes, he gives 2 rupees. In this case, 5 rupees, 2 rupees, very important, because single NP is also important for a businessman. But to whom he has given that 5 rupees, to whom he has given 2 rupees, assume they are beggars. Then the name of the beggar, is it material? No, it's not material. Amount is material. Then what the businessman may record in the books? He may simply record charity is given rupees 7, that is sufficient. The name of the person to whom he has given charity is not at all material when the amount involved is very small, ಆರ್ ಇವನ್ ಹಿ ಮೇ ಇನ್ಕ್ಲೂಡ್ ಇಟ್ ಇನ್ ಸಂಡ್ರಿ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆನ್ಸಸ್, ಇತರೆ ಖರ್ಚುಗಳು ಅಂತ ಕೂಡ ತಗೋಬಹುದು. ಅದನ್ನು ಬಿಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಅವನ ಹೆಸರೇನು, ಅವನು ಎಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಬಂದ, ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಬೇಕಾ ನಮಗೆ? ಅದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಬರಿತಾ ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಯುವರ್ books of account will be overburdened. Here what is material? Amount is material, so write the amount. Perhaps in some other cases big amount may be given as charity. In that case the name to whom that amount is given is also material, then it may be included in the books. But here it is not material. I hope it's clear. Any fact would be considered as material if it is reasonably believed that its knowledge would influence the decision of informed users of financial statement. ಯಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾಹಿತಿ ಫೈನಾನ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡೋರಿಗೆ ಅಗತ್ಯ ಇದೆಯಾ ಅದನ್ನು ನಾವು ಮಟೀರಿಯಲ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೇವೆ. ಇಫ್ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ರೀಸನೇಬಲಿ ಬಿಲೀವ್ಡ್ ದಟ್ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ನಾಲೆಜ್ ವುಡ್ ಇನ್ಫ್ಲುಯೆನ್ಸ್ ದ ಡಿಸಿಷನ್ ಆಫ್ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಡ್ ಯೂಸರ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಫೈನಾನ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್. ಫೈನಾನ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಯಾರೆಲ್ಲ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರ ಅವರ ನಿರ್ಣಯವನ್ನ ಇನ್ಫ್ಲುಯೆನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಯಾವುದೇ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಇದ್ರೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ಮಟೀರಿಯಲ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಅಂಡ್ ಆಲ್ ಸಚ್ ಮಟೀರಿಯಲ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಶುಡ್ ಬಿ ಇನ್ಕ್ಲೂಡೆಡ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಫೈನಾನ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಇವನ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಬುಕ್ಸ್. ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ ಶುಡ್ ಬಿ ಸ್ಟೇಟೆಡ್. ಓಕೆ, ದಟ್ಸ್ ವಾಟ್ materiality concept says. Next one is objectivity concept, or also called objective evidence concept. What it says, the concept of objectivity states that accounting transactions should be recorded in an objective manner. Whatever the transactions you are going to record in the books of account should be recorded in objective manner. Means it should be free from bias of accountants and others. It should be free from bias of accountants and others. Whatever you record it in the books of account, it should be recorded objectively. Then how objectivity comes? The objectivity comes only when the records in the books are supported by verifiable evidence, isn't it? If I go on recording something without any evidence, there is a possibility that I may record a false information. But when evidence is there, it is said to be objective. ಬುಕ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವುದನ್ನೇ ಬರೆಯುವುದಿದ್ರು, ನಾವು ಯಾವುದೇ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸಾಕ್ಷನ್ ಯಾವುದನ್ನು ಬರೆಯುವುದು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಏನಿಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಭಾಷೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅಕೌಂಟಿಂಗ್ ಇಸ್ ಎ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜ್ ಆಫ್ ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್. ವೆನ್ ಐ ಸೇ ಯಾವುದನ್ನೇ ಬರೆಯುವುದಿದ್ರು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಯಾವುದೇ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸಾಕ್ಷನ್ ಅನ್ನ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಮಾಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಸೆಟ್ ಟು ಬಿ ಆಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ವೆನ್ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಸಪೋರ್ಟೆಡ್ ಬೈ verifiable evidence or proper business documents. When it is supported by proper business documents. So in order to bring the objectivity to the accounting information, only those transactions should be recorded in the books. Only those transactions should be recorded in the books. Objectivity, which are supported by verifiable documents or vouchers. Only those transactions should be recorded in the books which are supported by verifiable documents or vouchers, like cash memo, then invoice, then even receipt, cash receipt, receipt. These are generally considered as verifiable evidence. When such evidence is there, subsequently you may check the validity of the transaction. See, when objectivity concept insists for the evidence, it is easy for the decision maker to verify any information. Otherwise, sometimes false information may be recorded, malpractices may come, isn't it? See, simply if I say purchase goods worth rupees 5,000, I may write 50,000. But when there is an evidence, I can't write that, isn't it? ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಬುಕ್ಕಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವುದೇ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸಾಕ್ಷನ್ ಅನ್ನ ಬರೆಯೋದಕ್ಕೆ ನಮಗೆ ಏನ್ ಬೇಕು, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಪೋರ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಬೇಕು. ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಯಾವ್ದಾಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಅದು ಕ್ಯಾಶ್ ಪರ್ಚೇಸ್ ಆಗಿದ್ರೆ ಕ್ಯಾಶ್ ಮೆಮೋ ಆಗಿರ್ತದೆ, ಕ್ರೆಡಿಟ್ ಪರ್ಚೇಸ್ ಆಗಿದ್ರೆ ಇನ್ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿರ್ತದೆ, ಅಥವಾ ಕೆಲವೊಮ್ಮೆ ರಿಸೀಟ್ ಆಗಿರ್ತದೆ, ಅಥವಾ ಕೆಲವೊಮ್ಮೆ ಅದರ್ ವೋಚರ್ಸ್ ಪೇಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದಿದ್ರೆ, ವೇಜಸ್ ಪೇಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದಿದ್ರೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟಂತ ಒಂದು ಡಾಕ್ಯುಮೆಂಟ್ ಅನ್ನು ನಾವು ಪ್ರಿಪೇರ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗಬಹುದು. ವೋಚರ್ ಅಂತ, ಅಕೌಂಟಿಂಗ್ ವೋಚರ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೇವೆ. ಆ ವೋಚರ್ಸ್ ಗಳ ಇದ್ರೆ ಮಾತ್ರ ಬುಕ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಎಂಟ್ರೀಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಅವಾಗ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಆಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟಿವಿಟಿ ವಿಲ್ ಕಮ್ ಟು ದ ಅಕೌಂಟಿಂಗ್ information. That's what objectivity concept says. That's about the accounting concepts. How many concepts we have seen so far? 13 concepts we have seen, and these are the basic concept on which entire accounting is based, starting from business entity concept till the objectivity concept. 13 concepts we have seen. I hope you have understood it. And in the coming chapters also, whenever the situation comes, we the lecturers will speak on it as and when the time warrants. At that time, you should be in a position to recall the things we have discussed in this class. Okay? Now, let's move on to see the next aspect, that is systems of accounting. See, there are two systems. One is the double entry system and the other one is single entry system. Actually, the word should not be used nowadays. It's called accounts from incomplete records. Double entry system, and the other one is accounts from incomplete records. Let's move on to see first the double entry system. What it says? Double entry system. Double means two. But double entry does not mean two entry. What it is then? See, actually, we have seen while discussing the dual aspect concept. What it says? Every business transaction involves two aspects or twofold effects, and recording the twofold effects or two aspects of a transaction is called double entry system of bookkeeping or double entry system of accounting. It is a system wherein the two aspects of a transaction are recorded. So it's a system wherein both the aspects, two aspects or both the aspects of a transaction are recorded in the books of accounts. It is based on the dual aspect concept, which states that every business transaction has two effects. The two effects are the benefit receiving and the benefit giving, the debit aspect and the credit aspect. Other day we have seen that example, sold goods worth rupees 5,000. Today let me take another example. Purchased goods rupees 10,000. Purchased goods rupees 10,000. See here, our business purchased goods worth rupees 10,000. What are the two aspects? Two aspects are, one is benefit receiving aspect. When we purchase goods we are going to receive, that will be the benefit. The amount of goods we are purchasing, that will be the benefit receiving aspect. Here, goods purchased by a business are called purchasers. That you have seen in the previous topic, isn't it? Goods purchased by a business are called purchasers. So, one aspect is here goods, that is purchasers. Means this transaction involves two aspects, means it involves at least two accounts. Sometimes more than two accounts may be involved. Purchasers account, one account is purchasers account, and you are giving a benefit of rupees 10,000 by giving cash. You are giving a benefit of rupees 10,000 by giving cash. That is another aspect, benefit giving aspect. So one account purchases account and other account cash account, and recording these two accounts or recording these two aspects systematically in the books is called double entry system of accounting. Recording both the aspects, debit aspect and the credit aspect in the books of account is called double entry system of accounting. And the basic principle, actually it is based on the dual aspect concept, and the basic principle of double entry system is for every debit there is a corresponding credit, or every debit must have a corresponding credit. You should always remember this because this is the fundamental principle on which entire double entry system is based. Entire double entry system is based on the fundamental principle. What is that? Every debit must have a corresponding credit. In each and every transaction, the same effect or the twofold effects will be there, and whenever we are going to record the transaction in the books, we must remember this principle. What is the principle? Principle is every debit must have a corresponding credit. Every debit must have a corresponding credit. Okay, that's about double entry system. Next one is the single entry system or accounts from incomplete records. What it says? The very name says single, means it is not complete system of maintaining records. Single entry system is not a complete system of maintaining records of financial transactions. It does not record twofold effect of each and every transaction. Sometimes it may record, sometimes it may not record at all. Sometimes it may not record at all, and sometimes it may record only one aspect. Such system is called incomplete system of maintaining the books of account, or single entry system of maintaining the books, but the proper word is incomplete system of recording the books of account, and you are going to learn about it in the later stage because you have a separate topic on accounts from incomplete records. There, let's see in detail. Okay, that's about the meaning of double entry system and the single entry system. Particularly, we are going to learn all the records in double entry system this year. Okay, but one topic is there on single entry system or incomplete records, but we are more concerned with this is very scientific method of recording the transaction. Double entry system is the scientific method of recording the transactions, and we are supposed to learn entire accounting in this system only, double entry system. And the fundamental principle, once again I repeat, every debit must have a corresponding credit. Okay, now again let me move on to see the basis of accounting. What it says? Basis. There are two bases. One is the cash basis, and the other one is credit basis. Sorry, cash basis, and the other one is accrual basis. Cash basis and accrual basis of accounting. Cash basis of accounting and the accrual basis of accounting. What is this cash basis of accounting? The cash basis of accounting is a system of accounting or a basis of accounting wherein the transactions are recorded only when cash is received or cash is paid. Transaction is recorded in the books only when the cash is received or cash is paid. That is cash basis of accounting. Under the cash basis, entries in the books of accounts are made when cash is actually received or paid and not when the receipt or payment becomes due. Under cash basis, entries in the books of accounts are made when the cash is received or paid and not when receipt or payment becomes due. ಈ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು, ಕ್ಯಾಶ್ ಅನ್ನ ರಿಸೀವ್ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ಅಥವಾ ಪೇ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ಮಾತ್ರ ನಾವು ಬುಕ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಎಂಟ್ರಿಯನ್ನ ಮಾಡ್ತೇವೆ. ಆ ಅಮೌಂಟ್ ಡ್ಯೂ ಆದಾಗ ಎಂಟ್ರಿಯನ್ನ ಮಾಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಅಂತ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮಿಗೆ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತೇವೆ, ಕ್ಯಾಶ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಆಫ್ ಅಕೌಂಟಿಂಗ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೇವೆ. ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್, ಸೇ ಆಫೀಸ್ ರೆಂಟ್ for the office for the month of March 2020 will be paid in the month of April, will be paid in the month of April. If we follow cash basis, we have to record it in the month of April. Record it in the month of April, and it should be taken to the financial statements in the month of, in the next year, or in the next month, because only when payment is made or cash is received we consider it as a transaction. ಈ ಕ್ಯಾಶ್ ಬೇಸಿಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕ್ಯಾಶ್ ಮೂವ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆದಾಗ ಮಾತ್ರ ನಾವೇನ್ ಅನ್ಕೊಳ್ತೇವೆ, ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸಾಕ್ಷನ್ ಆಯ್ತು ಅಂತ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ತೇವೆ. ಅದು ಅದರ ಇಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ಯಾವಾಗ ಆಗಿದೆಯೋ ಆ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಅದನ್ನ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಬದಲಾಗಿ ಯಾವ ಹಂತದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಥವಾ ಯಾವ ದಿನದಂದು ಕ್ಯಾಶ್ ವರ್ಗಾವಣೆ ಆಗತ್ತಾ ಆ ದಿನದಂದು ಆ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸಾಕ್ಷನ್ ಆಯ್ತು ಅಂತ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀವಿ. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಕ್ಯಾಶ್ ಬೇಸಿಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಅಕೌಂಟಿಂಗ್. ಅಂಡ್ ದ ಅದರ್ ಒನ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ಅಕ್ರೂಯಲ್ ಬೇಸಿಸ್. the accrual basis of accounting. What it says, this we have already seen while discussing the realization concept or revenue recognition concept in the last video. Okay, realization concept or revenue recognition concept. What it says, accrual basis of accounting, and we are following actually the accrual basis only. Accrual basis of accounting says that revenues and costs are recognized in the period in which they occur rather than they are received or paid. Under accrual basis, revenue and costs are recognized in the period in which they occur rather than they are received actually or paid actually. Okay. Here if we take the same example, if we follow accrual basis, the rent for March 2020 will be considered as the expense of March 2020 only and recorded there only, though it is paid in the month of April. But in case of cash basis, it will be taken as the expense of the month of April, but here it is in accrual basis it is taken as the expense of the March. A distinction is made in case of accrual basis of accounting. A distinction is made between the receipt of cash and the right to receive cash. The receipt of cash and the right to receive cash, and payment of cash and the legal obligation to pay cash. The payment of cash and the legal obligation to pay cash. See here, if we take the same example, rent of March. By the end of March 2020, we are in a legal obligation to pay cash. We may pay it in April, but we are supposed to pay, or the legal obligation falls on us on 31st March only. ಮಾರ್ಚ್ ತಿಂಗಳ ರೆಂಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಕೊಡುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಹೊಣೆಗಾರಿಕೆ ನಮಗೆ ಯಾವಾಗ ಬರ್ತದೆ? ಆ ಮಾರ್ಚ್ ತಿಂಗಳು ಮುಗಿತಾ ಇದ್ದಾಗಲೇ ಬರ್ತದೆ. ಏಪ್ರಿಲ್ ದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಪೇ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು, ಆದ್ರೆ ಅದು ಯಾವಾಗಿಂದ ಹೊಣೆಗಾರಿಕೆ ನಮಗೆ ಬಂತೋ ಆ ಹಂತದಲ್ಲೇ ಅದನ್ನ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡುವಂತದ್ದು ಯಾವ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್, ಯಾವ ಬೇಸಿಸ್? ಅಕ್ರೂಯಲ್ ಬೇಸಿಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಅಕೌಂಟಿಂಗ್. ಕ್ಯಾಶ್ ಬೇಸಿಸ್ ಆದ್ರೆ ಏಪ್ರಿಲ್ ದಲ್ಲಿ ಕ್ಯಾಶ್ ಪೇ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅಕ್ರೂಯಲ್ ಬೇಸಿಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ when the legal obligation to pay cash arises, we record it or when the right to receive cash arises, we record it. Unlike in cash system, here what we do, when the legal right to receive cash comes, we record it. When legal obligation to pay cash arises, we record it. That is accrual basis of accounting. That's what realization concept is. So we follow at present accrual basis of accounting rather than cash basis. In most of the organizations, we follow accrual basis and not the cash basis. Okay. Thus, under this system, the monetary effect of a transaction is taken into account in the period in which they are earned rather than in the period in which cash actually received or paid by the enterprise. The monetary effect of a transaction is taken into account in case of accrual basis. The period in which it is earned is more important than the period in which it is received. As we can see here, here the period for which we are supposed to pay and the period in which we paid makes a difference here in case of accrual basis. ಯಾವುದನ್ನ ನಾವು ತಗೊಳ್ಬೇಕು accrual basis ಅಲ್ಲಿ, ಯಾವಾಗ ನಮಗೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಪಾವತಿಸುವಂತ ಹೊಣೆಗಾರಿಕೆ ಬರ್ತದ ಅಥವಾ ಯಾವಾಗ ನಮಗೆ ಅದನ್ನ ರಿಸೀವ್ ಮಾಡತಕ್ಕಂತ ರೈಟ್ ಬರ್ತದ, ಆ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಅದನ್ನ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ರಾದರ್ ದೆನ್ ದ ಆಕ್ಚುಯಲ್ ರಿಸೀಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಕ್ಯಾಶ್ ಆರ್ ಪೇಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಕ್ಯಾಶ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಆ ಕ್ಯಾಶ್ ಅನ್ನ ಆಕ್ಚುಯಲ್ ಆಗಿ ಪೇ ಮಾಡ್ತೇವಲ್ಲ, ಆ ಸಮಯಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಬದಲಾಗಿ ಯಾವಾಗ ಅದನ್ನ ಪೇ ಮಾಡುವಂತ ಹೊಣೆಗಾರಿಕೆ ಬರ್ತದ ಅಥವಾ ಯಾವಾಗ ಅದನ್ನ ರಿಸೀವ್ ಮಾಡುವಂತ ರೈಟ್ ಬರ್ತದ, ಆ ಸಂದರ್ಭವನ್ನ ನಾವು ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸೂಕ್ತ ಅಂತ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೇವೆ. ಯಾವ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ? ಅಕ್ರೂಯಲ್ ಬೇಸಿಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಅಕೌಂಟಿಂಗ್, ಅಂಡ್ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಫಾಲೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಅಕ್ರೂಯಲ್ ಬೇಸಿಸ್ ಆಫ್ accounting. Very important. Okay, next we are supposed to see accounting standards in brief. We are supposed to see accounting standards in brief. See, what is accounting standard actually? Standard means a benchmark, standard means a benchmark. Accounting standard accounting standard. See, accounting standards are written policy documents covering the aspects of recognition, measurement, treatment, presentation and disclosure of accounting transactions in the financial statements. Accounting standards are the written policy. This is very important here. Written policy or guideline. Written policy or guideline. For what? For covering the aspects of recognition, measurement, treatment, presentation and disclosure of accounting transactions in financial statements. Financial statements ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಮಾಹಿತಿಯನ್ನ ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ we need some written policy in writing. And such policy in writing is called accounting standard, and it is developed by the accounting professionals. Accounting professionals developed these policies or guidelines, and it is accepted by all, and such standards are called accounting standards. Accounting standards is an authoritative statement issued by ICAI. So far as India is concerned, it is the authoritative statement issued by ICAI, a professional body of accounting in India. ಭಾರತದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಕೌಂಟಿಗೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟಂತ ಒಂದು ಹೈಯೆಸ್ಟ್ ಬಾಡಿ, ಅಥಾರಿಟೇಟಿವ್ ಬಾಡಿ ಒಂದಿದೆ, ICAI ಅಂತ. ಆ ICAI ನೀಡತಕ್ಕಂತ ಒಂದು ಅಧಿಕೃತ ಮಾಹಿತಿ ಅಥವಾ ಅಧಿಕೃತ ರೂಲ್ಗಳನ್ನ ನಾವೇನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತೇವೆ? ಅಕೌಂಟಿಂಗ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ಸ್. ಇಟ್ ಸೇಸ್ ಯು ಡೂ ಲೈಕ್ ದಿಸ್ ವೈಲ್ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂಯೇಷನ್ ಆಫ್ ಇನ್ವೆಂಟರಿ or while valuing the inventory, you follow conservatism principle. If The accounting standard says like that, we have to do like that only. All the accountants are supposed to do according to the standards given by ICAI. Okay, what is this ICAI? ICAI means the Institute of Chartered Accountants in India. ICAI is the Institute of Chartered Accountants in India, or Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. This is the highest accounting body. It periodically gives the rules and regulations, and such rules and regulations are called accounting standards. Accounting standards, and generally they are in par with the global standards. ಸಾಮಾನ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಜಾಗತಿಕ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ಸ್ಗಳು ಇದಾವೆಯೋ ಅದನ್ನು ನೋಡಿಬಿಟ್ಟು ICAI prepares the standards, accounting fixes the accounting standards in India, and we are supposed to follow those standards. Now we are not supposed to discuss in detail. In book they have given a chart. Let me speak on that later. And the objective of accounting standard is to bring uniformity in different accounting policies for enhancing reliability of financial statements. When there is a standard, the reliability increases. When there is a standard, actually uniformity comes. When there is uniformity, we can compare the financial statements of one year to another, or one firm to another firm, isn't it? Otherwise we can't compare. That uniformity will be brought in by the accounting standards. Okay, that's about the meaning of accounting standards. And now let me move on to touch one more concept in brief, that is IFRS. IFRS. Earlier they were called International Accounting Standards. Now the name has been changed for the last few years, and they are called presently IFRS, International Financial Reporting Standards. And International Financial Reporting Standards are globally accepted accounting standards. They are globally accepted accounting standards developed by International Accounting Standards Board. There is one board called International Accounting Standards Board, and that board has developed globally accepted accounting standards. Such standards are called IFRS, International Financial Reporting Standards, and they are set of accounting standards for reporting different types of business transactions and events in financial statements. What they are? IFRS is a set of accounting standards for reporting different types of business transactions and events in the financial statements. They are the set of accounting standards for reporting different types of business transactions and events in the financial statements. They are called IFRS. And in India, the IFRS has been converged into IND AS. IND AS. Earlier there were accounting standards developed by ICAI, or Accounting Standards Board. Now the accounting standards in India are converged or changed as IND AS, which are on par with IFRS. ಭಾರತದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಗಾಗಿದೆ ಈಗ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಅಕೌಂಟಿಂಗ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಇತ್ತು, ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ ಅಕೌಂಟಿಂಗ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಇತ್ತು. ಅದು ಮೊದಲೇ IAS, ಇಂಟರ್ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಅಕೌಂಟಿಂಗ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ಸ್ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಬದಲಾವಣೆಯೊಂದಿಗೆ ಬದಲಾಗ್ತಾ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಇವಾಗ ಏನಾಗಿದೆ, ಈ IFRS ಜೊತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಅಕೌಂಟಿಂಗ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ಸ್ ಸೇರ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಹೆಸರೇನಿದೆ ಈಗ, IND AS ಅಂತ. In India, IFRS has been converged as IND AS, means Indian accounting standards. That's about IFRS. In book there are some important Ind AS are given. You may just go through, because all the things may not be dealt in detail here, because they will be explained in the ಟಾಪಿಕ್ಸ್ ಟು ಕಮ್. ಅದು ಎಲ್ಲಿ ರೆಫರೆನ್ಸ್ ಬರ್ತದೋ ಆವಾಗ ಹೇಳಿದರೆ ಮಾತ್ರ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಪೂರ್ತಿಯಾಗಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಒಮ್ಮೆಲೆ ಹೇಳಿದರೆ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡು ಸ್ಕಿಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಓಕೆ, ವಿತ್ ದಿಸ್ ಐ ವಿಲ್ ಕನ್ಕ್ಲೂಡ್ today's class. I hope you have understood the things. Let us meet again in the next class. Thank you.